Story 1. Probably the Tunguska event in 1908, a massive explosion over Siberia that flattened 800 square miles of forest. Witnesses saw the sky split in two and a pillar of fire. It is believed to have been caused by a meteoroid airburst. Story 2. Homo habilis would have witnessed a very nearby supernova that was visible during the day for a year and bright enough to light the night sky at its peak. If we only count Homo sapiens, it is probably the 1006 supernova. Story 3. Mount St. Helens erupting. The photographer died on the mountain but protected the film with his body. He witnessed some extraordinary events. Story 4. That man they found alive in a sunken ship survived for a couple of days by finding an air pocket and was rescued. Story 5. The Krakatoa eruption was the loudest sound in recorded history. Instruments detected the sound wave crossing the Earth more than 3 times. It was heard by people 3,000 miles away. The explosion is estimated to be equal to 200 megatons of trinitrotoluene, 4 times as powerful as the Tsar Bomba. Story 6. Seeing Earth rise over the horizon of the moon for the first time in history surely has to be up there. Story 7. On February 20th, 1943, a Mexican farmer named Dionisio Pulido noticed a crack on the surface of a small hill in his cornfield. Soon, smoke and sparks started coming from the crack. Within 24 hours, a cinder cone volcano 50 meters tall was there, growing to between 100 meters and 150 meters within a week. The volcano, named Paracutin, is now 424 meters above the valley floor and has a crater 200 meters across. The eruption spewed lava, ash, cinders, and volcanic sand across an area of 233 square kilometers. All residents of 2 towns, totaling hundreds of people, had to evacuate and then permanently relocate. Story 8. The Missoula floods stand out as a strong candidate. Around 14,000 years ago, during the most recent ice age, there was a massive glacial lake in modern-day Washington state that was dammed by a 2,000-foot-tall ice wall. Every 50 years or so, this ice wall would burst, flooding a significant portion of the state in mere hours. The ice wall would then reform and the cycle would repeat. These megafloods repeatedly and quickly reshaped Washington's geology. It is possible that human beings witnessed these floods. Although there is dispute over when humans arrived in North America over the land bridge, if any were living in that region at the time, they would have witnessed destruction on a scale almost unimaginable. A wall of water rushing toward them at highway speeds, spanning the horizon. It would have been visually striking and undoubtedly terrifying. Story 9. Imagine being the first Maori to discover New Zealand in the 1300s and stepping off your canoe to find a lost world. You are not only the first human to set foot on this archipelago, but also the first mammal. It is the closest real-world human experience to Jurassic Park. The land is inhabited by reptiles and birds, including massive flightless birds. There are 3-meter-tall flightless birds called moa grazing on treetops, but they are not the apex predators. Suddenly, the herd of moa runs away in terror as a gigantic eagle swoops down from the sky. Sadly, within 100 years of humans and their mammalian companions, dogs and rats, landing on these islands, all of that world was gone. Story 10. That time Randy Johnson threw a pitch and caused a bird to explode mid-flight. I do not know what the odds are on that, but it has to be up there for the craziest things to ever happen. Story 11. I believe it was 27 years ago in 1998 when The Undertaker threw mankind off hell in a cell and plummeted 16 feet through an announcer's table. Story 12. The Carrington event in 1859 interfered with telegram transmissions, and people as far as the equator saw the northern or southern lights. Scientists who study tree rings and historians have uncovered evidence of similar events in 774 and 993 AD. The supernova that led to the Crab Nebula is also significant. Suddenly, there appears another sun that fades away a few weeks later. What was that phenomenon? If we get to see Betelgeuse go supernova, approximately 640 years after it actually happened, we will witness the same event but understand what it truly is. Story 13. The Aurora Borealis. I am sure the first people to witness it probably formed a cult around it or something. Story 14. It has to be like the first ever tsunami. Can you imagine living next to the ocean your whole life? It is probably a huge part of your society and culture, and then a 5-meter tall wave is coming at you to destroy your village and harm your family. Story 15. That video of the largest iceberg calving event filmed shows ice the size of cities flipping over and over. Insanity. Story 16. The 1908 Tunguska meteor strike. There may have only been 3 fatalities, but those who experienced it and others must have been aware of it. Story 17. SN 1006. This supernova, observed in 1006 AD, is considered the brightest stellar event in recorded history, reaching a magnitude of -7.5. It was visible during the day and described by observers across the globe. Story 18. Being inside a city being sacked by an invading army would be terrifying. For example, if you were in Baghdad when it was sacked by the Mongols or Constantinople when it was sacked by the Ottomans, it would feel as if the whole world was ending. Honorable mention. Being inside a major city when the Black Death first struck and everyone was rapidly dying. Story 19. The Black Plague. Imagine 90% of everyone you know and have ever met dying from a disease you do not even understand. Story 20. The Krakatoa eruption in 1883. The explosion was heard 3,110 kilometers away in Perth, Western Australia, and Rodriguez near Mauritius, 4,800 kilometers away. The acoustic pressure wave circled the globe more than 3 times. At least 36,417 deaths are attributed to the eruption and the tsunamis it created. Significant additional effects were felt worldwide in the days and weeks after the volcano's eruption. Some islands in the western Indian Ocean, approximately 3,000 miles away, still heard it at a decibel level similar to a gun blast. Due to the speed of sound, it is likely the people on these distant islands did not hear Krakatoa for nearly 4 hours after its eruption. The pressure wave generated by the colossal third explosion radiated out from Krakatoa at 1,086 kilometers per hour. The eruption is estimated to have reached 180 decibels, loud enough to be heard 5,000 kilometers away. It was so powerful that it ruptured the eardrums of sailors on the RMS Narm Castle of the Castle Line, which was anchored off Sumatra, and caused a spike of more than 8.5 kilopascals in the pressure gauge attached to a gasometer in the Batavia Gasworks, 160 kilometers away, sending it off the scale. At Batavia, the air waves burst windows and cracked walls. The pressure wave was recorded on barographs worldwide. Several barographs recorded the wave 7 times over 5 days. 4 times with the wave traveling away from the volcano to its antipodal point and 3 times traveling back to the volcano. Hence, the wave rounded the globe 3.5 times. Story 21. What about those military pilots who tracked the unidentified flying objects, also known as unidentified aerial phenomena, on film and in their sights? That haunting feeling of knowing we might have been visited by extraterrestrials is incredible. Story 22. The Leonids meteor shower of 1833. Story 23. 1561 celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg. According to the broadsheet, around dawn on April 14, 1561, many men and women of Nuremberg saw what the broadsheet describes as an aerial battle out of the sun, followed by the appearance of a large black triangular object and exhausted combatant spheres falling to earth in clouds of smoke. The broadsheet claims that witnesses observed hundreds of spheres, cylinders, and other oddly shaped objects that moved erratically overhead. The woodcut illustration depicts objects of various shapes, including crosses with or without spheres on the arms, small spheres, 2 large crescents, a black spear, and cylindrical objects from which several small spheres emerged and darted around the sky at dawn. Story 24. The Japanese man who survived the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, only to travel to Nagasaki and narrowly survive that as well. An incredibly rare living witness to history. Story 25. The pyramids being built would be something I would go back in time to see. Or the floods and Pangea forming. Story 26. Probably the Lituya Bay, Alaska megatsunami that reached a height of 1,720 feet, 524 meters. A handful of people were able to witness it and survive the wave. It actually only killed 5 people, surprisingly. Story 27. The Holocaust was a horrific event. Imagine forcing a group of starving people into a gas chamber repeatedly. It is truly terrible, and it could happen again if we are not vigilant. Story 28. The 1958 Alaskan megatsunami was caused by a landslide. It reportedly reached 1,720 feet. A father and son who were fishing had to outrun the wave in their boat. Story 29. Lieutenant Colonel William Rankin parachuted through a thunderstorm. Took him 45 minutes to reach the ground. Story 30. I think it has to be the moon landing. It is the craziest event, but it is also one that any witness had to know was immensely important. Story 31. This may not be the anticipated answer, but I would say the hysteria caused by the fictional but taken seriously Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio broadcast in 1938. People thought there was a real Martian invasion happening. Story 32. The supernova of 1054 AD. Imagine being a farmer or a monk in the 11th century, looking up and seeing a guest star suddenly appear in the sky. It was so bright that you could see it in broad daylight for 23 days straight. With no concept of astronomy, you would be witnessing the birth of the Crab Nebula and might think you were seeing a message from God or the literal end of the world. Story 33. Hiroshima and Nagasaki one after the other and living. Or the first responders and technicians at the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. Story 34. I like to think that someone either got to witness the Strait of Gibraltar forming or Britain being separated from the European mainland. Story 35. To those saying Krakatoa, not bad, but I will raise you Tambora. 71,000 people witnessed it so closely they did not survive. It was the biggest eruption in the last 25,000 years. It caused the infamous year without a summer, which, while also causing famine and similar hardships, inspired Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein. She had wanted to spend a nice summer in the Alps and chose the wrong year. Story 36. I would say the soldiers who saw the first tank coming towards them in World War I. I mean, they probably had seen machines and other unusual things during the early 20th century. But still, I would be terrified seeing a giant machine rolling towards me with the intent to kill. Story 37. The rise of fascism in America is driven by wealthy individuals who are exploiting the most vulnerable people on the planet. Story 38. Depends on your belief system. If Jesus did the things he is said to have done in the Bible, then some people in the Galilee area witnessed some serious events about 2,000 years ago. Story 39. Bill Clinton stared into the camera and told 200 million people he did not have sexual relations with that woman while clearly suppressing a smirk. Story 40. Whoever watched that group figured out that if they split an atom or fused two atoms, it would release a huge amount of energy. Bonus for the people who thought its best use was to create electricity and kill a lot of people at once. Story 41. Fire? The electric light bulb? The Wright brothers' flight? Newton's Principia? Okay, it's Galileo's observations, including those from his telescope and the law of falling bodies. Story 42. The first photograph ever taken, the first telegram ever sent, the first microcomputer displaying text on a screen. Is the progression of technology a singular event? I think our inventions are far more remarkable than any kind of natural disaster, which these comments seem full of. Story 43. Missoula ice dam floods carved out the Columbia River in Oregon and Washington. It is estimated that at the end of the last ice age, multiple ice dams froze and broke from Missoula, Montana, allowing an approximately 800-foot wall of water to rush towards the Pacific Ocean. People may have crossed over from Siberia via the land bridge in the region by this time. Story 44. When the first indigenous people arrived in Australia, the plants and animals would have been incredible, especially 65,000 years ago. Story 45. I saw the documentary about it not long ago. I never realized how incredible the rescue of the Thai soccer team from the flooded caves was. Story 46. Beyond just seeing an atomic bomb destroy your city, the first known tsunami was probably even worse. The ocean suddenly recedes. Then a massive wall of water crashes ashore. Story 47. I'm thinking about the indigenous Australian people who were so deep in the outback that they were uncontacted in the 1950s. They had no idea that white people even existed and simply minded their own business, hunting kangaroos or whatever they did. Then one day they were exposed to nuclear testing. Story 48. According to a physical geography professor at the University of Washington, there is a possibility that humans witnessed a simultaneous Brett's flood and the eruption of Mount Rainier. Story 49. During the 1950s and 1960s, the United States experienced a transformative period known as the Civil Rights Era, which impacted everyone positively through peaceful protests, demonstrations, and millions of people marching to Washington, District of Columbia. This was a time marked by widespread activism aimed at dismantling systemic racism and segregation that had long plagued American society. Key figures like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Malcolm X emerged, leading the charge for equality and justice. The events of this era, including landmark protests, pivotal legislation, and significant court rulings, led to profound changes that reshaped the social and political landscape of the nation. Although many at the onset of this movement could not foresee its eventual significance, the struggle for civil rights served as a powerful catalyst for change, influencing generations to come and laying the groundwork for an ongoing pursuit of justice and equality in modern America. Story 50. I always think cheese rolling looks hilarious, and running naked into the North Sea en masse in the middle of winter looks like a right hoot. That is on my bucket list. Story 51. Tsutomu Yamaguchi, a Japanese marine engineer who survived both the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings during World War II. Story 52. Might get heat for it, but I would say the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I know you will just label me as a believer, but historians agree on that. So yeah, seeing a man beaten severely and then crucified, seen dead, then seeing that same man talking to you without a single wound on his body 3 days later would be the most remarkable event witnessed by any human. Story 53. Asteroids, volcanoes, atomics, war, maybe an unidentified flying object, childbirth, fireworks, a flood, seeing a loved one die. Story 54. Some old man, after a walk, got stuck at a river and could not cross it. He commanded the waters to hold back so he could ford it, and with his friends they arrived in paradise. After crossing the riverbed, he waved the waters back and washed away all the bad guys who were chasing them. That must have been quite a sight. Story 55. When people performed or witnessed magic and wrote about it in the Bible, doing so now might lead others to call you mentally ill. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.